Tonight, dozens of families in Kabul, Afghanistan are spending the last days of Ramadan burying their daughters after a gruesome attack outside a school on Saturday. We've just gotten an update that the death toll has risen to at least 85 killed, most of them young girls, and almost 150 others wounded. The Taliban say they're not responsible and have announced a 3-day ceasefire for the Eid holiday. For the families in mourning, there is not much to celebrate. Loved ones gather to bury the dead. Dozens of schoolgirls killed in a blast as they were leaving class on Saturday afternoon in Kabul. An uncle cries out.
She was 15 years old and was studying in class 8. She was very intelligent and didn't miss a single day of school. Yesterday, her mother told her not to go to school, but she said, "No, I will go today, but I will not go tomorrow." She told the truth, and we buried her here today.
Afghan's Interior Ministry says a car bomb initially exploded, followed by 2 IEDs just outside the school.
First it was the car bomb, and then the second blast went off, and afterwards came the third. I did not panic and rushed to the scene, and suddenly I found myself amongst bodies whose hands or heads were cut off and bones were smashed. All of them were girls. I saw dead bodies were piled on top of each other.
The Afghan government blames the Taliban, but the Taliban denies any involvement, blaming instead the actions on sinister circles operating in the name of ISIS. No group, though, has claimed responsibility for the attack. Many insurgents in the country are known to despise the education of girls. But for the loved ones, no claim of responsibility will bring back the dead. Let's talk more about this with Fatima Galani. She's a women's rights activist, the former president of the Afghan Red Crescent Society, and was one of 4 women involved with the Taliban peace talks. She joins me now from Doha, and thanks so much for doing so. Do you worry that this horrible attack is a pointer in many ways to what could be to come in terms of the advancement of rights and opportunities for Afghan girls and women? It is clearly a message.
Well, the other day when this happened in Logar with the entrance exam for the students to go to university, I thought what could be worse? But then came this. This is the worst thing that anyone could have thought, men or women in Afghanistan. But imagine, this is happening while the American soldiers are still here, the NATO is still here. War is still going on in Afghanistan. We don't know who's fighting anymore. Taliban says it's not us. Then who is it? The government and the Taliban and everyone, it has become a game of blaming each other. This is the war. This is the 43 years of war, which has given place to people that doing things like that, and we don't even know who they are. Isn't it the time for peace? Isn't it that the whole world come and help us?
You would hope so. The thing is, you have a unique perspective. You lived the before and after the Taliban, represented Afghanistan in talks with the Taliban. You literally faced the men who banished women like you from public life. I mean, it must feel intensely personal to contemplate a potential return to those old and terrible days.
We have no intention to turn to those days. The world should not allow such a thing to happen. And the people of Afghanistan, above all, should not let this happen. Women of Afghanistan are not the women of yesterday. There are millions of dedicated, educated, very, very strong women in Afghanistan which will never allow such a thing should happen. That's why yesterday we had a program with women, and they were saying one thing: peace has to come. And they were asking all of us to stand here and start the negotiations again. But what peace means for us is not just the lack of war. Peace means inclusion. Peace means that men and women of Afghanistan are included in everything in Afghanistan. What you saw yesterday, I mean, this should never happen anywhere in the world.
Of course
not. But whom
not.
you're going to blame now?
You know, you say that, you know, the world should not allow a return to those bad old days. Do you trust the Taliban, those who've said women's rights will be protected? There are different factions, of course, within the Taliban, but there are plenty on record who say there will be a return to Sharia law, a return to women being sidelined and repressed. When you say the world shouldn't let it happen, do you think the world can do anything about it if the Taliban take over?
Look, this constitution today we have in Afghanistan, this is not a secular constitution. It is an Islamic constitution. Everything for women in this constitution, I and many women, men and women who are studied Islamic jurisprudence or anything, they can defend it. We can defend ourselves. It is the war that we cannot control. If I say that I want the world to help us, I want the world to help us to end the war. When I was in a constitution, when we were writing this very constitution regarding women, we did have other people within our side who were in the same imagination and the same way of thinking like our Talibans are. But negotiations and talking and bringing scholars who could explain things helped us. Negotiation will help us. But will negotiation start? Look, we are sitting here for weeks and we want to start that. And I urge Taliban, I urge the world to help us to start the peace negotiations soon after Eid, because Afghanistan cannot live like this. We cannot live the way that we saw and we scenes like this again and again, and you can't blame anyone because no one will take the responsibility.
Yeah.
Who is responsible?
Well, exactly. But if this wasn't the Taliban, if it was ISIS, which is entirely possible, when it comes to these sorts of attacks, this is a message. It's a message at a girls' school. What can the West do to preserve the gains that have been made, that you fought to make? I mean, it's hard to imagine that the answer is anything but nothing. In a real sense, if the Taliban come in and turn the clock back, what can the West do? Is there any reason to believe the Taliban would abide by what the West would ask of it?
The clock will not turn back. This is a new Afghanistan. The Taliban will have to talk to us. We will have to come to a conclusion that what kind of the future Afghanistan we want, all of us together. It cannot be that Afghanistan. Look, at that time they took over after a chaotic situation of civil war between the Mujahideen themselves. Everything was so bad that the Taliban looked good and they continued. Today it's not like that. We have a constitution, we have a country, we have a government, we have everything. It is, yes, corruption, and there are lots of things which is bad, but it is nothing to compare with what it was before. This is a government there we are talking about. It's the systems that we have today. All we need to have is fix those systems together with Taliban. The war has to end. The war, when the war ends, then we will know who is doing what. You said that what the West...
Sorry,
you
yes,
said
no.
What the West what the West can do. Afghanistan still needs help. Afghanistan will have to get help from all of the NATO countries. Strings has to be attached to that, which is women's rights, human rights, and inclusion and the rights of minority. I don't want to differentiate between the right of women and other minorities. We have to live together in harmony. I am from the generation before the wars. I remember how Afghanistan was. I remember how we lived together. All I want is go to that. Don't we deserve that?
You do. I was in Kabul in January after the Taliban were kicked out, and I saw the relief and the hope and the promise that people wanted from that. You have done extraordinary work, Fatima Golani. We've got to leave it there. Keep up the work you are doing. It is vital for the future of Afghanistan. Thank you so much.